An important factor to consider with a gas is its relative density to air. Now let's look at what that means. The density dictates whether the gas will rise or fall, and knowing the density of a gas means that you can have a better understanding of where increased risk of hazards may occur in your workplace. If the density is lower than air, the gas will rise. If higher, it's going to fall. Gases lighter than air, like hydrogen, will tend to move to the highest point in any enclosed space and will collect there unless ventilated at high level. Gases that are heavier than air, like propane, will collect in low-lying areas, and for this reason they should be used and stored well away from drains or ducts where they could collect if a leak occurs. Remember, if the density is lower than air, the gas will rise, and if the density is higher, it will fall. Let's now take a look at gas properties and their associated hazards. It's extremely important that the user and also people working in the vicinity understand the properties and any potential hazards. The main industrial gases can be split into three groups: asphyxiant, oxidant and flammable. Asphyxiant gases are argon, carbon dioxide, helium or balloon gas, and oxygen-free nitrogen. Oxidant gases are oxygen and air. Flammable or fuel gases are acetylene, hydrogen, propane and propylene. Asphyxiant gases are all odourless and colourless. Generally, they don't react with other materials and don't support combustion or support life. Oxidant gases. These do not themselves burn, but support combustion and include oxygen and air. Oxygen is used together with flammable gases for welding and other major applications. It's odourless and colourless and generally considered non-toxic at atmospheric pressure. High-pressure oxygen also reacts violently with oil and grease, causing fire hazards or an explosion. The normal oxygen content of the air is 21%, but an increase of just 2.5% can have a dramatic effect on your environment. In an oxygen-rich environment, sparks, which would normally be regarded as harmless, can cause a fire, and materials which don't burn in air may burn vigorously, or even spontaneously in enriched air. Remember that even so-called flame-resisting textile materials will burn in an oxygen-enriched environment. As we've said, air is all around you. It's colourless, odourless and supports combustion. Air itself is not hazardous, but cylinders of compressed air should be treated with the same respect as any high-pressure gas. Flammable or fuel gases all have an associated asphyxiation hazard, but also present hazards of fire and explosion. These gases, when mixed with an oxidant and provided with an ignition source, will burn. Acetylene has a very low ignition energy, which means it can ignite very readily. A leakage of acetylene can be identified by its strong garlic-like smell. It's lighter than air. Hydrogen is odourless, colourless, tasteless and has a very low ignition temperature. It also burns with an invisible flame and is lighter than air. Propane is highly flammable. It's usually odorized to give a characteristic smell. BOC propane is stenched to give a smell of fish and is heavier than air. Propylene is highly flammable. It has a natural pungent smell and is colourless. It's heavier than air. The properties of gas mixtures do not necessarily depend on the pure gases which make them up. Therefore, you should consult the label and the safety datasheet. All gases, except oxygen, displace oxygen and result in an oxygen-deficient environment, which can present the hazard of asphyxiation. Oxygen is essential to life, and it's therefore vital to ensure that adequate oxygen is present in any atmosphere being breathed. If a cylinder leaks and the gas displaces the air, or oxygen levels in the environment decrease for other reasons, the operator does not have sufficient oxygen to breathe. Where insufficient oxygen is present, you can become unconscious almost instantaneously, and that could be followed by death. Oxygen deficiency cannot be readily detected by our normal senses, and the danger you're in will not be obvious, as most gases are colourless and odourless. Victims are usually unaware of the danger and may even have a feeling of well-being. You won't even know you're in danger until it's too late. If you enter an oxygen-deficient environment, just 2 breaths could endanger your life. You need oxygen to live. Make sure you can recognise likely danger areas at your workplace. These could be any closed areas, a basement, a lift, a mine shaft, a ship's hold or a tank, anywhere where there is limited airflow from the outside environment. As the level decreases, you may experience dizziness, increased heartbeat, a buzzing in your ears, a headache and loss of muscular control. This could be followed by death in 5 to 8 minutes. So how can you protect yourself and your workmates from an invisible and undetectable danger? Well, firstly, awareness, and secondly, have an emergency plan. If you're working in an enclosed environment, you should monitor oxygen levels, carry out a full risk assessment of the work area and produce an emergency plan and train staff accordingly. Never work alone in danger areas. Make sure someone is there to help if you get into trouble. If you discover a colleague who has collapsed in an oxygen-deficient environment, do not go straight to them, or the same thing may happen to you. Follow all emergency procedures. Call for help. Make sure there are 2 or more people to help with the rescue. You must have an oxygen supply and a lifeline with someone at the other end. That way you won't become another victim yourself. Remember these points and follow your emergency plan. Stay safe.